Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Crochet Rainbows and Butterflies. Today we are going to learn how to crochet this Christmas tree ornament. I have made this Christmas tree using puff stitches and I've also attached some beads to it. Now before we get started, if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to never miss a crochet tutorial. Now for this tutorial I have used crochet hook 3mm. You also need a smaller hook to attach the beads like this. You can use any beads, whatever color you prefer. I've used white and I have used crochet 4-ply yarn for this tutorial. You also need some ribbon, and this is an embroidery thread that I used. You can use a ribbon here as well. So let's get started. We begin with a slip knot. And now you chain 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19. Now once you have your chain 19, you need to work one single crochet in the second stitch from the hook. So you don't count the one that's on your hook. That's right here. In the next stitch, you need to work one single crochet. Now you work one single crochet in the next stitch, 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 and you need to continue working one single crochet in each stitch of this row till you reach the end of the row. Now after you complete your row, you need to turn your work and you need to work a slip stitch in the next stitch right here. And you start working your puff stitch in this stitch. So for that you pull up your loop, yarn over, insert the hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, that's 2, yarn over, insert the hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, that's 3, yarn over, insert the hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now you have all your loops on the hook. You need to yarn over, pull through all the loops. Now I will attach the bead right on top of this puff stitch. So what you need to do is you pull up your yarn, your loop, you need to change your hook, and now you put the bead in this hook, now you need to pull a loop of yarn with this hook through the bead and through this loop. Like this. Now once you've done that, you can change your hook. You need to complete the stitch by just chaining one. And now we need to get back to this stitch right here, because if we work the next puff stitch and pull up a loop, it would be too long. So we need to get back here. So what you need to do is you need to insert your hook inside this space. That's right here. And you need to work a slip stitch. I'll show you this again. Now once you work your slip stitch there, you need to start working the next puff. So for that you need to skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2. So you skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2. In the 3rd stitch, you start working your puff stitch, yarn over, insert the hook, pull up your yarn, that's 1. Yarn over, insert your hook. In the same stitch, pull up your yarn, that's 2. Yarn over, insert the hook. In the same stitch, pull up your yarn, that's 3. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up your yarn, that's 4. So now you need to pull through all these loops. And we are going to attach the next bead here. So for that you pull up your loop, you change the hook, insert your bead, like this. And once you've done this, you need to chain 1 and you need to work a slip stitch in this space right here. So you insert the hook from here and you work a slip stitch. And now we're going to work the next puff. For that you need to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and in the 3rd stitch we're going to work the next puff stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull out a loop, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how I attach the beads, but if you want you can always use a needle and thread and stitch them after you complete working the tray. And now you work your slip stitch. Like this. Now we worked 3 puff stitches, you need to make 3 more. So you need to continue working the same pattern. You need to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2. In the 3rd stitch you work a puff stitch with a bead. Again you skip 2 stitches, 1, 2. In the 3rd stitch you work a puff stitch with a bead. Again skip 2 stitches, and in the 3rd stitch you work a puff stitch with a bead. Continue working this pattern for the rest of this row. I've completed my row and I attached the last bead and I worked chain here. Now you need to turn your work and you need to work a slip stitch in this space. in between two puff stitches, you need to work a slip stitch right here. And you start working the first puff stitch. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now in the next row, we do not attach the beads. So after you work your puff stitch, you need to chain 1 and you start working the second puff stitch in the next space here, right here in between the next two puff stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chain 1. You work the next puff stitch here in the next space. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chain 1. The next one, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chain 1 and the last one right here in the last space. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now after you complete your row, you need to turn your work and you need to work a slip stitch in this space, this chain space, and you start working your first puff stitch right here. So you pull up a loop and you start working your puff stitch. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And now in this row we will be attaching the beads in the same manner that we attach the beads in the first row of the puff stitch. So you insert your bead, pull up your loop through the bead and through the loop, chain 1 and you work a slip stitch right here under the bead. And now we work the next puff stitch right here in this space. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to insert the next bead. And you work a slip stitch right here. That's 2. The next one will be right here in this chain space. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And you work a slip stitch right here. It's 1, 2, 3 and the last one right here in this chain space. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Pull up a loop through the bead. Like this. Chain 1 and you work a slip stitch under the bead. After you complete your row, you need to turn your work, and now you need to work a slip stitch in this space right here, and you start working the first puff stitch of this row. Pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now this row will not have any beads on the puff stitch, so after you finish the puff stitch, you chain 1, you work the next puff stitch in the next space here, right here. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chain 1 and the next puff stitch in the next space right here. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. After you complete your row, you need to turn your work, and now you work a slip stitch in the chain space and you start working your first puff stitch of this row. So you pull up a loop and 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to attach the bead on the puff stitch for this row. So you take your bead, you pull up a loop through the bead, chain 1 and you work a slip stitch right here under the bead. Now you work the next puff stitch right here in the next space. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Take the next bead, you pull the yarn through the bead, and you chain 1. So in this row we have only 2 puff stitches and 2 beads. After you complete your row, you need to turn your work and you need to work a slip stitch in the space between the 2 puff stitches, and you work a puff stitch right there in the same space. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now since this is the last row, we will attach a bead on this puff stitch. So you pull out your yarn through the bead and the loop and you chain 1. We've completed working the Christmas tree. I have tied the ribbon right here and the embroidery thread right here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching and happy crocheting.